We've been having some fun working with windows with both a capital W and a lowercase w. But now I want to give you kind of a scenario or a story problem. Now don't panic, it doesn't involve any math. I just want to know what you would do. Let's say that you come home, tired after a long day, and find your kids at home. Now, please, you got to work with me on this. Maybe you work from home so you don't come home after a long day, and maybe you don't have kids. But for me, just pretend for a minute that you do. You basically have 3 kids. Child number 1 is being good, quote unquote, and studying at the kitchen table for a math test that they have tomorrow. Child number 2 is trying to be helpful, emphasis on the word trying, by preparing dinner, since he knows you're tired, and in his quest to make peanut butter and jelly for everyone, he has landed 3 pieces of bread jelly side down on the kitchen floor. Child number 3, being completely oblivious to helping out around the house or to schoolwork, is in the backyard playing with the dogs. The dogs have effectively tackled him on the concrete, thus resulting in a fair amount of blood coming from each of his knees, as well as tears from his eyes. Now, my question for you is, what do you do? Now, first, let me tell you there's a limitation. You can't say scream and run out of the house. That is not one of your options. But in reality, what would you do in this particular situation? Well, my guess is that you would probably kind of do some prioritization. Bloody knees is probably going to take priority over math problems and peanut butter and jelly on the floor. But it would be a process, right? You'd probably get the kid with the bloody knees, bring him inside, dry off the tears, give him a hug, make sure the dogs are outside so they're not continuing to cause problems. Get some cleaner, maybe sit him on the kitchen counter and let him start rinsing off his knees in the sink. Meanwhile, while he's doing that, you can be grabbing some paper towels and thrusting them at the child who's doing peanut butter jelly and saying, "Thank you for trying, but can you please get the jelly off the floor?" While those 2 things are going on, you might be also addressing child number 1. Okay, we got washing going on in the sink, we got wiping up going on over on the floor, and by the way, what is your math test about tomorrow? This is what parents do, and they do it on almost a continuous basis. You probably just never thought about it before. If we take a look at this very carefully, though, you really aren't doing 3 things at once. And you've probably told people before in your life, I can't do more than 1 thing at a time. It appears like you're handling all 3 problems. But really what you're doing is handling little bits and pieces of each of the 3 problems and then switching off between them. So we get the kid with the bloody knees started, and while he's getting started, you're handing paper towels to the other kid, and after you hand the paper towels off, then you're asking about the math problem. Then you're probably going to go back to the sink and see what you need to do with Band-Aids. Get the idea? Good, because I want you to keep that exact idea when we talk about our next topic. The topic is known as multitasking. Multitasking in a computer is the process of having more than one operation running on a computer at the same time. In older computer systems, a single application would hold up the other applications while it completed its tasks. So let's say you were trying to print a large document. The word processor would hold control over the processor and say, none of you get to do any of the things you want until I'm done printing out every one of these pages. And that really slowed things down. That would be the same as you saying, I can't deal with any of the other 2 kids until I completely have all of the knees cleaned up, bandaged up, hugs and kisses taken care of. Now, while it may seem that that is an easy way to do it, so you can focus on 1 thing at a time, it really isn't the reality of the way things work, and it really isn't the most efficient, because in doing so, we isolate 1 thing and can only take care of 1 thing at a time. That 1 thing likes that particular attention, but unfortunately, all the others have to wait. And when's the last time in your workday that you can remember being able to focus on only 1 project until that project was completely finished and buttoned up before you even had to think 1 time about another one? It just isn't reality. Since Windows 2000 in the computer world, we've had something called preemptive multitasking, and I love that. That means to prioritize multiple activities going on at the same time. The way that this happened is with Windows 2000 and everything after, we let the operating system take control from the applications and decide who gets priority and in what order. This is basically what you do at home. If you've ever had kids that are fighting, you probably don't address all of them at once. You take control. You don't just let them run wild and handle it on their own. Otherwise, bad things could happen. And then you prioritize things, like you did in this particular scenario. Between studying for a math test and needing help, cleaning up peanut butter and jelly, and having bloody knees and tears, you probably realized doing some triage that the bloody knees needed to have priority. And that's exactly what you did. The computer now does exactly the same by taking the control away from each individual application and saying, okay, let me take a look at what's trying to go on. Maybe one application wants to print, while another application is trying to do a calculation, and a third one is trying to receive some email. Which one of these has priority? And I'm going to let that one go first. But I'm not going to let it completely finish all of its tasks. I'm going to let it do maybe part of the task, then I'll give some control of the processor over to another one. That's what preemptive multitasking is all about. If we have only a single processor, remember that the processor can only do one at a time. But what makes it appear like the computer is doing more than one thing is just like you did with your kids. It looks like you're handling all three because you were switching back and forth between the three very quickly. That's what the processor does as well. Now remember, we did introduce something a little while ago called multi-core processors. Remember dual-core and quad-core processors? So that has changed things a little bit. Remember that means you actually have 4 processors. And if you have 4 processors, it can do 4 things at once. At least for our scenario, that's what we'll say it does. So, in the older versions and with single-core processors, they're only doing one thing at a time. But it is keeping control and switching back and forth between multiple tasks, so it may appear that your computer is receiving an email, printing a document, and performing calculations all at once. That multi-core processor thing is really beyond what we want to talk about, but I just want you to be aware of that. Multi-core processors handle threads, which very simply are just portions of a task, just like you did. You didn't handle all of cleaning up and bandaging the knees. You started off by getting them clean, and then you did something else. Multi-core processors do this as well by simply splitting larger tasks into smaller ones and allowing the equivalent of multiple tasks to occur at once. The entire concept of multitasking isn't really something you need to be aware of because most of it's happening behind the scenes. But if you used computers or you're aware of computers that are maybe 15 to 20 years or more older, then you might remember that you could only work in one application at a time. And people also spent a lot of time watching a busy cursor. As I said, if it was printing a document, nothing else was going to happen on that particular file or computer until the printing was done. So multitasking, while it seems almost transparent to us, is really a critical part. And what we want to do next is kind of show you how you can work with multiple windows at the same time through multitasking.